At a campaign event for former President Donald Trump in Philadelphia on Tuesday, Representative Byron Donalds made some claims that were not true. He claimed that black families were better off during Jim Crow. Here's the quote. You see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together. During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative. Black people have always been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then HEW, Lyndon Johnson, you go down that road, and now we are where we are. Now, HEW is in reference, of course, to Health, Education, Welfare Department under Johnson, the Great Society. I don't know if he missed the whole thing about Jim Crow and how black people did not have that many rights during Jim Crow. I mean, it's not the only thing he missed there, but it's a rather big one. He also said that black voters voted more conservatively. What does that mean? Like, oh, well, they voted for Republicans. Yes, but that was back when they were liberals, not when they were conservative. See, there's been a party flip, right? At the time, Republicans supported ending slavery and pushed Reconstruction-era policies that were actually intended to expand voting rights and economic freedoms for black Americans. That's more of a liberal position, right? Now, in the 1960s civil rights era, the parties ended up doing a switch. Democrats became liberal, Republicans became conservative, and of course, Republicans actually ended up being the racist party that we all know and hate today.
The Republican Party's racist.
So there you go. Democrats pushed civil rights legislation, as well as created Medicaid for low-income Americans, the expansion of federal food stamp, welfare, and housing programs. You know, things that have elevated millions of people out of poverty. But the right wing says, no, we don't need anti-poverty programs. We just need people to get married and have babies. Wait a minute, how's that going to help? Look, they're blaming the economic issues facing the black community on them just not getting married. No, wait a minute. These days, it's not people's fault that it takes two incomes to survive, okay? And so, now, by the way, it didn't used to. Back in the 1960s, where Republicans, you know, they had this, they idolize that time period for some reason. And look, economically, yeah, things were better for certain people, certainly better for white people, okay, middle-class white people, because you only needed one income to survive. But it wasn't great for black people, okay? It wasn't great for Hispanics. It wasn't great for Latinos. It wasn't great for anybody except for white middle-class people, okay? By the way, at the same time, if you're really going to idolize the 1960s, then, all right, why don't we go back to 1960s era tax brackets, you know, before Ronald Reagan cut taxes for corporations massively, okay? Because you had rich people paying a marginal rate of up to 90% of their income in taxes. And so, that's one way to make America great again, tax the rich, okay? It's not like force people to get married, which again, I think marriage, if you want to get married, you should be able to get married. If you don't want to get married, you shouldn't have to, especially if you want to actually survive economically. You know, you want to talk about, you know, setting up, what is it, social engineering. Well, that's what Republicans are doing. They're social engineering using economic factors to force people into marriages. Marriages that they might not want to be a part of, but they need each other. They need the benefits of that marriage in order to be able to survive. So here's the thing, right? The expansion of welfare benefits and programs are a response to the increased costs of living, okay, for working class people. And as a side effect, it allowed for women to not be locked into abusive relationships in order to survive. Right wing, they want to return to that. They want women to end up being locked in these abusive relationships or these terrible relationships in order to be able to survive. And that's where they're taking away things like abortion rights. That's why they're targeting things like contraception. That's why they won't address wage gaps between men and women workers and actually discourage women from being in the workplace overall altogether, right? And so the right wants to go back to that. depressing women, and also depressing black people overall. Look at the justice system, right? The justice system is much more punitive when dealing with black men, incarcerating them more than white people for the same crimes. They end up getting harsher and longer sentences. And what happens as a result of that is that they end up becoming a cheap source of labor for multinational corporations. They also end up making private prisons wealthy because those private prisons get state contracts, federal, state money and federal money going to house these prisoners. Again, often for nonviolent drug offenses. And so that can be compared, to a modern day form of slavery. And so, there's that issue, right? And then, of course, you have the most obvious problems that happened during Jim Crow, which is the suppression of voter rights for black people through racist laws and threats of violence from groups like the KKK, which, by the way, there is still the suppression of voter rights. There is still laws, racist laws that target black people. There are still threats of violence from people who are racist. And look, back then there was also widespread segregation when it came to education and communities. It's gotten a little bit better since then. But on that issue, the things that the right wing continues to push, it's all an effort to try to drag black people back to Jim Crow. Systemic racism, right? And some examples of that are black people were prevented from moving to more affluent white areas, often either priced out or just flat out denied loans. Even if they could afford the mortgage, they were still denied loans, denied being able to move into those areas. Or, if they were able to actually move to these areas, they would be quickly targeted with racist attacks. And so there is that. It's the systemic racism that's in our system. And so Byron Donalds, though, completely ignores all of that and says, well, it's the breakdown of the family. That's what's causing all of the black people's problems, all the black community's problems. Is where's the fathers? Where's the fathers? Black families, we need to force people to get married, and that's it. That's going to fix all your problems. No, it doesn't. At best, he's doing revisionist history. At worst, he's caping for white supremacy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.